Well, hi everybody, I'm Paul Gross, and it was the astronomical event that has captivated all of us here in Southeast Michigan. Of course, we're talking about the big meteor last night, and there are a lot of things that you need to know because there are some things that happened, but also some things that you may have heard that actually didn't happen. So we're going to dispel all of that and have some pretty cool exclusive information for you here on this live web chat here on clickondetroit.com. So what I want to start with is, first of all, there are 4 terms that you need to know. Okay, the first term is meteor. Anytime you see what we'll call a shooting star, just one of those routine little shooting stars, that's called a meteor. Now, if you see an exceptionally bright one, say as bright as the planet Venus in the sky or brighter than that, we call that a fireball. Okay, so now you've got a meteor, and then the brighter ones are called fireballs. If there is a fireball and you see it break apart, that's called a bolide, B-O-L-I-D-E, a bolide. And then, of course, most of these burn up before they hit the ground, but if should any part of it make it to the ground and actually exist here to the surface, then that piece that you would find is called a meteorite. So a meteor is just up there in the sky. A meteorite is what it's called if you find a piece of that stuff that makes it all the way to the ground. So as far as how big these things are when they hit the atmosphere, well, keep in mind the Earth is bombarded by these things all the time, but most of them are the size of a grape nut cereal nugget. And I'm not kidding. Most of the meteors that we have here are the size of one of these grape nuts nuggets. They just hit the atmosphere. They're about 70 miles up. They are traveling at anywhere from 25,000 to 160,000 miles per hour. So they hit the atmosphere, and friction causes them to burn up. And that's the bright streak that we see across the sky. But that's most of them. The one that hit last night was bigger. It was probably maybe the size of a basketball, somewhere along those lines, maybe a little smaller than that. And so that's why it was such a brilliant display in the sky. For a second or two, it was as bright as daylight out there. And keep in mind that when these things hit the atmosphere, there's a lot of pressure that develops, and that causes these things to strain and stress and eventually, again, break apart. So again, most of the pieces of these things burn up before they hit the ground. Now, as far as where it was seen, this thing was pretty bright. So take a look at a map I have for you here. This is from the International Meteor Organization, and this is a map of all reports that people have, not everybody, but just the ones that reported to this website that they saw it. And as you can see, there's a big concentration right here in Southeast Michigan, but you can see one person saw all the way here, all the way almost to Iowa. And then you can see somebody here just northwest of Pittsburgh saw it. So this was seen over quite a large area, and even up in northern Michigan there, looks like the Cadillac area there, and up south of Alpena there. So this was seen over quite a large area, and it was seen by something else. And this is something that a contact of mine at NASA emailed me in the middle of the night. Take a look at this. Now, we've talked about that new GO-16 weather satellite. Well, that satellite has a lightning mapper on it. And so if you see that thing in the upper left corner that's circled, now this is way zoomed in, those 2 little colored squares, those are actually 2 pixels, okay? And there's a scale on the right there. This fireball, this bolide, this bright meteor was actually detected by the lightning tracker on the GO-16 satellite. Now, don't pay attention to the location there, because that location, we don't know what the angle of the satellite was that it was looking at us. And as you know, you look at things from an angle and it kind of offsets things. So don't look at that and say, oh, well, that's where it hit or anything like that, because that is just the indication that we got from the satellite that it actually saw this meteorite, this meteor. All right, so let's talk about one thing that did not happen. Now, there was a big boom that followed. Some people say it was several seconds, some people say it was a couple, 3 minutes, but there was a boom that followed when this thing exploded up in the sky. Okay, it's kind of like a sonic boom, basically. So that was such a loud boom that it actually shook the ground, and the U.S. Geological Survey has said that they detected that, and it was the equivalent of a 2.0 earthquake. But it was not an earthquake. And I actually saw one national morning newscast this morning that actually said that it was an earthquake caused by the impact of this meteor. Well, this meteor did not impact. If it did, it would just be a few little pieces, but this was not an impact that caused the ground to shake. What this was, again, a big boom in the sky that then caused the shaking that some of you felt. And my son actually said that the icicles fell off the side of his condo because of the boom that occurred. And by the way, just by comparison, if you may recall, was it a couple, 3 years ago, a bigger one of these things happened over Russia. Now, that was daytime. It was so big that it was visible during the day, and that one broke windows and actually did damage. That was such a strong sonic boom. This one was a smaller one. We felt it and we heard it, but it was not something that caused any damage. Now, as I mentioned, most of these things do burn up before they hit the ground. Based on what we're hearing here in the Local 4 newsroom, what experts are telling us is that if it was on a trajectory to hit somewhere, it was probably somewhere in Macomb County. But again, we have not had any confirmed reports of any strikes, of any pieces of this thing, and we have not had any confirmed reports of anybody finding a piece of this meteor. Now, there is a way, though, if you see something that you think might be a piece of this thing, there is a way to determine if it's a meteor or not. And you know me, I happen to have a meteor test kit. But before we get to that, let's show you, this is an actual meteor here. So we're going to zoom in real tight here. Let's see, let me move it over here in front of my shirt there. This is an actual meteor. This is, and they don't all look like this. Some of them do look different, but this is a very common shape and size for a meteor. They're not just big round balls. So some people think it's just a big round ball. No, sometimes in fact they break up on entry and it's just like literally broken in half, and you see, you know, like a sharp edge on it. So one thing that if you see something that you think might be a piece of this meteor and you want to know, is this something that could be a meteor? Well, there's a test. Now, the first thing, there's 3 things that you can do. And really all 3, if you get a positive test on those, then you might have something. First of all, there's a lot of metal content in these things. There's iron, there's nickel, things like that. The thing to remember is that iron is magnetic, okay? So, and it's also heavy. So this little rock, it feels a lot heavier to me than a similar type of rock would be, just something from here on Earth. So that's the first tip-off, if it feels a lot heavier than you would expect. The second thing is if it's magnetic. Now what I have here, let's get it in the shot here. Okay, this right here is actually a pretty strong magnet, and as you can see, it's sticking to the rock there. So if you have a normal Earth rock, generally the magnet is not going to stick to that. Okay, so that's the second part of the test, is that if it's a magnetic rock, then you might be onto something. There could be some iron, some content that is magnetic. Now the third one, you need something that's called a streak pad. I happen to have a streak pad. I told you I have a meteor test kit. If you take your meteorite or your suspected rock, and if you scrape it real good on the streak, notice that there's almost nothing, just maybe barely a little streak on there. If this was an Earth rock, it would leave a very dark streak on the streak pad. But as you can see, we're only seeing just barely a little bit of a streak there. So I understand that most of you, in fact, I would say probably all of you, do not have a streak pad, but you all have something that will work just as well. Because I would wager that almost all of you have a toilet in your house that has a tank with a lid on it. You know, one of those, that big porcelain type lid. Well, take that lid, if you turn it upside down, the inside is real rough. You know what I'm talking about. You know, you feel the inside of that thing, it's real rough. If you rub your rock against that, again, if you get just kind of a light brown, just a faint light brown streak, it might be a meteorite. But if it's a dark streak on there, then again, that is probably a terrestrial rock, an Earth rock. So you do have a streak pad. It's the lid of your toilet. Okay, so the lid of your toilet tank. All right, one last thing. I know a lot of people, especially in Macomb County, you're going to go out and you're going to be looking for these things. So we have the snow out there. If you have a metal detector, I know some people do have metal detectors, and if not, I know there's going to be a run on them at the hobby stores. But if you have a metal detector, again, because these meteors have a lot of metal content in them, well, a metal detector would identify it if there was a piece of that fell in the area that you're looking. So if you're going to look for one of these things, you're going to probably need a metal detector, because again, unless it just hit a piece of bare pavement, it's just sitting out in the open, or hit your car or something like that, this stuff is just going to be in the snow and you'll never see it. So you'd have to have a metal detector. All right, one last thing I want to talk about, and that is, do even bigger one of these things hit the Earth? Well, yeah, we've had asteroids hit the Earth, and in fact, there's a theory among scientists that the dinosaurs were wiped out by one of these large ones that hit the Earth. It actually put up so much stuff in the atmosphere, the Earth cooled, and the dinosaurs, being reptiles, the cooler weather was deadly to them, and the dinosaurs, they died off, and the mammals were the ones that survived, because they're mammals, they're warm-blooded. So we have been hit, and if you ever want to see the results of one of those giant ones that hit, I've taken my family here. You go to northern Arizona, there's a place called Meteor Crater. Meteor Crater is where, here, you see it right here. This is a mile-wide crater. It looks a lot like it did about 50,000 years ago when this big asteroid, this giant meteor hit. And so that's actually something you can go. There's actually a visitor center there, and you can walk pretty much right up to the rim of this crater. So there actually are surviving examples of some of those past gigantic meteor hits. So that's just an example, a physical example of what the big ones can do. But again, I want to emphasize, most of the pieces of stuff flying around in space, you know, dust, rocks, things like that, most of them that hit our Earth are the size of a grape nut nugget. Okay, and those are the normal shooting stars that you see across the sky. So I hope you found this interesting, entertaining. We have some questions that people are posting. Yeah.
Somebody wants to know if they find meteorites, is it safe to touch?
Oh, great question. If you find a meteorite, it is safe to touch. Okay, it's only right when it hits that obviously it's going to be hot, but at this point it's cooled off. So absolutely safe to touch. They're not radioactive or anything like that, so you absolutely pick it up. And if you do find something, you've passed the test here, and you find something that you think is a meteorite, you might want to call me here at Channel 4 or at least email me here at the station. You can also contact me on Twitter at PGLocal4. Call the newsroom here, just get word to me, and if it sounds like you have something, maybe we can do our little test here and we can see if you actually have a meteor. But you need to satisfy those criteria. Don't just pick up any rock and say, I think I have something. Do the test first and then let me know, and then, like I say, we'll see if we can determine if you have a real meteorite on your hands. Anybody else have a question? We'll have you post those on our clickondetroit.com page that some of you are watching on, and we will also have you posted on the Local 4 Facebook page. We're also doing this on Facebook Live. So any other questions? You have? Oh, we have another question. Yeah.
Are some of the materials people might find familiar to the materials we have on Earth?
What do you mean materials?
For the meteorite, like if you find
Oh, the question, yeah, good question. The question is, are some of the materials in the meteorite similar to materials that we find here on Earth? Yeah, a lot of meteorites actually have some iron and some nickel in them. So those are common elements that we have here on Earth. And so it's not from Earth, it's from out of this world, and it's been floating around out there in space maybe for 2, 3, 4 billion years. So if you have a meteorite like the one I have here, this is pretty old stuff here. This is something from perhaps the origin of our solar system here. And again, they're made up of a lot of things that we do have right here on Earth in terms of elements and things like that. Any other questions, Ken? Are you getting anything?
Some people are wondering, why wasn't this detected quicker and more preemptively?
Question was, why was this not predicted more, or why did we not have notice about this? There is actually a NASA program where they actually are out there searching for what are called near-Earth asteroids or near-Earth objects. NEOs are really what the common name is, near-Earth objects. And what they're looking for are the big ones, the ones like that cause meteor crater that I just showed you, those types of ones that could do catastrophic damage. They are out there with the telescopes, and they are scanning the skies. Very difficult to find these things, but once they find one, they log it, they keep track of it forever at that point. But the thing is, like the one that hit last night, and I shouldn't say hit because we don't necessarily think it hit the Earth, but the one that hit our atmosphere, that one was much smaller. Like I say, it could have been the size of a basketball, it could have been a little bit smaller than that. And so something like that, they're just not going to find ahead of time with a telescope. Now, there have been some funding issues with that near-Earth object program. I would argue that it's important to fund research for something that could potentially protect the inhabitants of our planet, but basically the bottom line is they do look for these things. They look for the big ones, and once they identify them, they log them, and we track them, and they actually compute the orbit, and they actually know for hundreds and thousands of years what those orbits are going to be and if any of them are going to come near Earth. And every so often, one of them might come, when we say close to Earth, I'm talking about between the Earth and the Moon, or maybe the Moon's distance away or something like that. We always hear about that, and they always tell us about that because people with backyard telescopes like to try and find them. But again, even if it comes as close as between the Earth and the Moon, that's not close enough to even worry about. It's the really close calls, which I have yet to hear about one, but it's those really close calls that are the ones that we need to be concerned about. And again, they have these orbits mapped out for thousands of years, I think, and so they're watching. It's just they haven't found them all, and it's the ones that we don't know about that the ones that we have to worry about. So any other questions, Ken?
Some people are wondering, so are these completely random events? You know, are there hot spots around the world that this happens, or is it completely just by chance?
Okay, good question. Ken's asking, are these completely random events, or are there hot spots around the world, things like that? Well, first of all, there's two ways to answer the question. First of all, we have our annual meteor showers. There's the Perseid meteor showers in August. There's the Geminid meteor showers in December. In fact, if you were watching on the morning of, it was I think Thursday, December 14th, I think it was, just last month, I was doing a live shot for Local 4 here, and just before I went on the air, a Geminid meteor, and it actually was a bolide, but it wasn't as big as the one last night, but a bolide actually, I saw this brightest fireball I've ever seen, and it broke up toward the end right before my live shot. Now those are annual meteor showers. We know about those, okay? It's these just random, bits of stuff that's just kind of flying around out there in space. Those are the ones we don't know about. And keep in mind, even these rarer, much more rare bolides and fireballs, they do happen. Not as rare as you think, because keep in mind, 3/4 of our planet is ocean. So there might be a bunch of these happening over the ocean that nobody has ever seen. And keep in mind, during the daytime, if it's not an exceptionally bright one, just kind of a regular one, you might not even know it during the day. So yeah, some of these are very random events, but then usually with the annual meteor showers that we get, we don't get these ones that cause damage, or these ones that are so giant like last night. Those usually are not associated with the meteor showers themselves. So see if we have any other questions.
Do satellites ever get damaged from meteors, or the International Space Station ever see any damage?
Oh, question, do satellites or things like the International Space Station ever get damaged by these things? Well, if one were to hit them, there would be damage, because again, they're traveling, as I mentioned, at a very, very high rate of speed, 25,000 to 160,000 miles per hour. So if one of these were to hit, then yes. And there are some satellites that actually, when we pass through these meteor showers, which are really just passing through the remnant dust trail left behind a comet. So again, a lot of these things out there, they still will sometimes, with certain satellites, they'll put them in a protective mode, and they'll maybe, like if it's a satellite with a telescope, they'll put the put the cover over the telescope lens and things like that. So there are some protective measures they can take with some of our spacecraft up there, but generally, again, it's been a long time since I've heard of a spacecraft actually hit by a meteor so large that it actually damaged or destroyed the spacecraft. So that's something that is very, very exceptionally rare. Exceptionally rare. Anything else, Ken?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. All right. Well, I hope you found this interesting. Certainly, this has been an event that has captured our attention. It's something a lot of people were exposed to, and if you didn't see it yourself, and I didn't either, I was in a meeting at my synagogue last night, and I was in a room, the one room that had like almost no windows, so I didn't see it, but everybody knows somebody who did see it. So I hope this has helped you understand what happened, also explain what didn't happen last night. Of course, the Local 4 newsroom, the best in town, we're all over this story, so we're out and about all around town, and we're going to have the very latest for you on Local 4 News at 4, 5, and 6. And also, don't forget, anything that breaks, we will have it here on clickondetroit.com. So that concludes our live web chat. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day.